Hello, welcome to the History of the Vietnam War podcast again. I'm your host, Virgil, as always, your Virgil on this quest. This is the geography and just the way up high back flap of the book, History of Vietnam. All we're trying to do is, it's going to be it's going to be multiple episodes to do the actual history, step-by-step, play-by-play, 2,500 year history of the Vietnamese people. So what we're wanting for this particular thing is just to give you the context so you can see that these guys fight. That's what they do. That's who they are. These guys fight. And so that's what we're doing here. Just geographic, bird's eye satellite photo view, and then the actual, like history, same thing, bird's eye satellite photo view of the geography, just to of the history, just to give you just a quick overview. So let's start off. Vietnam, geography, 128,000 square miles, about half the size of Texas, and kind of J-shaped instead of Texas-shaped. There's 2,300 rivers in Vietnam, which constitute 2,500 miles of waterway, rivers, creeks. Also on top of that, 2,900 miles of border create that J shape of Vietnam. 2,100 of those 2,900 miles are coastline. So what we're dealing with is a very wet, very just reed, estuary, jungle, like a very, very harsh terrain. And from that harsh terrain, ambushes and lots of riverine or littoral warfare in the estuary delta region. And from that, you get, the defoliants, Operation Ranch Hand, over a decade, America dropped 20 million gallons of defoliant, which is still wreaking havoc over there today. And it's wreaked havoc amongst the veterans of the Vietnam War. The two of the big rivers that affect our story, the Red River, which is in the north, where Hanoi is on the Red River, and then in the south and running kind of north-south-ish is the Mekong, which Ho Chi Minh City now, but during our story it was called Saigon. The city of Saigon was on the was on the Mekong River. Let's see. Going into the geography, so that what we have is not just jungle warfare, but also the riverine warfare. They're meshed. They're hand in hand in this situation. The strategic concerns that comes from 25,000 miles of waterway. Going into other strategic concerns, America, the strategic minds were terrified of having another Korea on our hands. Here's why that it probably wouldn't have happened that way. North Korea sits on a plain, and I completely get it. Can you imagine 500,000 Chinese rolling you up down through the entire southern democratic country that you were trying to protect, getting rolled all the way down to the bottom of it? That's what we were afraid of. So, now I'm not going to say afraid. That's what we were trying to avoid. And the difference is in the northern portion. There's two main differences. The northern portion of Vietnam, the northern border of Vietnam with China, is in the Yunnan province of China. The Yunnan Highlands, Yunnan Mountains are kind of like the foothills of the Himalayas. The average height above sea level is over a mile. So the northern part of Vietnam is average over a mile above sea level. That's the Yunnan province of China. You would have to alter the carburetors of your Jeeps and your Soviet Jeeps you'd have to alternate. You'd have to alter the carburetors just to get over the, just to have your engines run if you're going to mechanize invade Vietnam from China, which they did. I'm not saying they didn't. They did 79, but they learned that that was a bad plan. The Yunnan province is sparsely populated. The North Chinese plain that Korea butts up to is the birthplace of the Han. So there are a lot more people up there than there are in the Yunnan province. Also, historically, Vietnam and China have butted heads. Vietnam is a Sino-centric society, meaning it came out of China, or it owes a lot to China for its the basis of its society. But it is they have butted heads. We'll get into that in just a second. So again, you have the Red River Delta up north. You have going around the coast. So at its narrowest point, Vietnam is 40 miles wide. It is not a vast expanse. And the thing about Vietnam is the western border of Vietnam is mostly the Annamite Mountains. The Annamite, also sometimes called the Annamese. In French, it's the Chêne and Namatique, which is a bad word over there. They hate that word. And about 10 minutes, we'll get into that. What those mountains is, so on the western side of the western border of Vietnam, creating the backbone of the Southeast Asian landmass is the Annamite Mountains. From there, like they have a sharp, steep decline, and then they have a coastal plain. And kind of think of the way America populated itself and the way post-colonial America, pre-revolution America, populated itself with Eurocentric communities. Those started in small little areas and hopscotch down the coasts, which is what happened with Vietnam. Because in the same way, you have the Appalachians, the Adirondack, and then the coastal plains. You have the Annamite Mountains, coastal plain, coast. Down to the Kamau Peninsula. That's at the very bottom. Let's see. Let's talk about that. Let's go back to that Annamite Mountain. And Annam is a bad word. They hate it over there. In 670, the Tang Dynasty repacified. Anytime you hear repacified in a historical, especially societal, military context, you got to realize that almost always they didn't repacify. And also, there's some major anger there to be repacified. So the Tang Dynasty repacified the South, and I did air quotes for those of y'all who are listening, and called it Annam, which means pacified South. Nam is south, southern. They did not like that. And that term ever since has been, it's not derogatory, but it's kind of like the Hopi and the Anasazi. So the Anasazi were called Hopi by other people. They didn't like that. The Roundheads and the Cavaliers in the English Civil War, they didn't like, I mean, it's almost like you get tagged with the moniker by the other guy that you hate the worst. Or fire service, police, military. A lot of times the nickname that you get is the one that you hate the most. It is what it is, and then extrapolate that up to nation state form, and that's what's going on there. And they hate it over there. Annam, and it sucks that the Annamite Mountains are forever linked with like a name that they despise, the pacified South. Anyway, let's give you the whole story. We'll use that as the anchor point. Let's delve into the history. And again, this is the bird's eye view history. It is in no way comprehensive. It's just to give you that, hey, these guys like to fight. We gotta, just to give you the context. So the first written accounts from the 3rd century, dating back to like 500 BC, in the south bank of the Yangtze River, there was a people called the Viet, or the Yue in Chinese. they, through Chinese expansion, and here's another thing. Chinese history, it goes back over 4,500 years. During that time frame, there's only been like a couple hundred years where they've been unified. The whole of Chinese history is like, most is not, I guess whole is not, the overwhelming majority of Chinese history is the period of the 5 kingdoms or the 3 kingdoms or the 16 warlords, or, I mean, it's a very tumultuous history. And so Vietnam has a very similar history, and that's kind of where give you that context. So as Chinese expansion pushed the Viet south of the Yangtze, they got into the Red River Valley, and some stuff happened, and there was these competing fiefdoms or city-states, kind of like Greece, I mean, like these little polities, and a general conquered everybody, got them in 207 BC into the kingdom of Nam Viet, kingdom of the southern Viet, or the southern people. And it was basically, that little area was from Canton over to the Red River and down to about Hue. And side note, anybody from Texas, Canton, if you ever want to look it up, there's a free state in Van Zandt County right outside of Canton that goes back to like the Texas Revolution, and you gotta read it. Just look it up. The Free State of Van Zandt County. It's right outside of Canton, Texas, not Canton, China. It's interesting. Look it up if you got some free time and some. I'm not going to endorse Wikipedia. I'm going to say Encyclopedia Britannica or some other encyclopedia, or Wikipedia. If you got the time, just Google it. It's cool. It's fun. Or you can DuckDuckGo it. That's personally what I use. Anyway, 111, the Han took over China. Kingdom of Nam Viet became Gao Chi, southern China. In 39 AD, the Trung sisters, Trung Troc and Trung Ni, led a revolt. It only lasted 4 years, but and it's kind of neat. These two sisters kind of had a co-rulership, like a kind of like a co-consul, and they got re-overthrown or re-couped, and they drowned themselves to keep in the Red River to keep from being. You know, I'm sure it would probably be a brutal death. So I'm not saying it wasn't like in some ways self-serving, but I mean they became the first superstars of Vietnamese independence. And in the 1950s, there were boulevards in Hanoi and Saigon named after the Trung sisters. So again, we're under Han rule. 220, the Han collapsed. We had multiple revolts back in time, and there remained a fiefdom. 670, the Tang Dynasty repacified the kingdom of Nam Viet, or Gao Chi, and called it the An Nam, which the pacified South, which really ticked off a lot of people. Fast forward a few hundred years, in 938, a guy named No Quin started a revolt, and by 946, he had conquered most of what we think of as Vietnam. And for the next 900 years, there was no China. So I'm going to say Chinese or Vietnam was independent. They were under Chinese protection. I'm air quoting for those who are watching. Under Chinese protection. Correction. I'm air quoting for those who aren't watching but listening. The next 900 years was. There was times, well, there's like 20 years in the early 15th century, but there were a Chinese protectorate, and they would pay him a tribute every once in a while, but there was no Chinese interference with their actual rule. It was a nominal thing, or it was a de jure but not de facto type, quote unquote, protectorate. Again, that was air quoted. So they in the 968, a general named Dinh Bo Linh got everybody together, created the kingdom of Dai-Ko Viet. Dai-Ko Viet. That was the Chinese protectorate. But yeah, you're a protectorate, but we're going to do things our way. Also, back it up a little bit. Champas, the kingdom of Champas, was in 1471 conquered and absorbed into the Gauchi protectorate. And again, that's that coastal hopscotch going down, the Sino-centric versus Indo-centric. Sorry. So on Southeast Asian landmass, you have the Viet, which constitutes a lot of, or think of northern Vietnam from the Vietnam War. That's the kingdom of the Nam-Viet, Gauchi. You have Champas, which is a lot of southern Vietnam. And then Cambodius would be Khmer. You have the Thai kingdom. And that Khmer goes up into Laos today. So Laos, Cambodia, that was a lot of the Khmer. Now, those aren't, just to kind of give you a rough estimate. And then there's going to be a picture that I'm showing. But it's not there yet as I'm standing here right now. So, again, so I just mentioned North, South Vietnam. North and South Vietnam have a historical area. So in 1673, there was a brutal civil war in Vietnam, and they basically agreed to disagree and became the North and South Vietnam at the 17th parallel, which fast forward 300 years and we'd be doing it all over again. Vietnam was reunified in 1802, but it was very Pyrrhic. So the emperor that reunified and created the dynasty utilized French help. And so over the next 50 years, from 1802 to 1857, France kept saying, hey, bud, knock, knock. Hey, remember me? I helped you reunify your kingdom. I would like to have these concessions and these unequal trade alliances. And finally, in 1857, they said, you know what? We're just going to take it over. Because keep in mind, this was like the peak of the colonial empire, the colonial era of empire. And France was, and there's a reason why colonialism is a bad word and it has a bad connotation. And Vietnam had, like, from the French Indochina, that's part of where it got its bad name from. I mean, they're not just French Indochina, but everywhere. There was a lot of brutal suppression of anything even remotely resembling independence, which, and a lot of times just meant some form of cultural identity. Squash, that's what they did. So 1857, France invades Da Nang. Da Nang falls in 58. By 67, the South had fallen. By 80. I think 83, they conquered the Red River. What they did was they established the Indo-Chinese Union in 1887. But there was, Cochin China, which was the southern tip of the Indo-Chinese landmass, or the Southeast Asian landmass. That was Cochin China. That was a kingdom established in 62. Cambodia was established in 63. Tonkin and Annam were both North and South Vietnam, the way we think of it. 1884, and Laos was created in 1893. And all of these were put under the French governance of the Indo-Chinese Union. And that was created basically the framework that was in place more or less until France fell in 1940. And the Vichy French was a puppet state in Europe. There was a French protectorate that was the Japanese helped set up, air quoting, the Vietnamese helped set up in August of 40, a mostly bloodless coup that was a puppet state where they just kind of looked over the shoulder of these European colonial governing bureaucrats. And then in March of 45, knowing they're going to lose the war, they did a not bloodless, they did a very bloody coup in March of 45, took over. It was a brutal 6 months until they signed in Tokyo Harbor on the deck of the Missouri, the Tokyo Treaty that ended the war, September 2nd. And that brings it up to where the end of World War II is going to be the end of the broad stroke. We'll come back and do some historical tie-ins, and maybe do like a whole series of episodes based on Vietnamese history, because it's very in depth. I mean, I gave you the Cliff Notes. I gave you the Cliff Notes to the Cliff Notes version. I mean, there's a very intricate, lots of stuff going on. But just to say, these guys have fought 900 years of fought for independence. Very independent people. Basically, Vietnamese people just say, you do you, and I'm going to fight if you tell me what to do. And that's kind of where we're going. So September 2nd, France says, you know what? Hey guys, I got an idea. I'd kind of like to have my empire back. Even though you lost it in 1940, I'd kind of like to have all my stuff back, please. And that's where we're set it up. And then we're gonna, so from here on out, we're gonna be in depth. We're gonna be diving really in depth on this stuff. About the absence, I'm sorry guys. I don't have an excuse. It's on me. I apologize. I appreciate you sticking with me. Please like, please subscribe to the channel. Please look up. Well, I'll wait to the next one. I've got another one that I'm working on. I'm sorry. Don't worry about that. We'll deal with that next one. I appreciate your time. I hope you have a great day and a great take care of yourself out there. Thank you. Bye.